Oh, faithfully sharing value and interpreting great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally here with the Book Talk. Today, we're diving into Mishima Yukio's The Temple of the Golden Pavilion. Back in the 1950s, a truly shocking event happened in Japan. A lonely young monk, unhappy with the temple and society, burned down Kyoto's most famous landmark, the Golden Pavilion, and admitted to it. He didn't believe his actions were wrong at all. This event really shook Japan back then and was turned into a classic novel. That's the Golden Pavilion we're covering today. Mishima Yukio, the author, is a key post-war Japanese writer, famous for his fancy writing and weird thinking. He's big in the West, too, often dubbed the Japanese Hemingway. Out of Mishima's books, The Golden Pavilion from 1956 is the most famous, called The Peak of Tragic Disillusionment Art. It's in over 20 languages, spread globally, and big in the literary world. He wrote this before hitting 30, back when he was just a nobody young writer. He took the burning event as inspiration, sparked by the monk's line, "I'm jealous of the Golden Pavilion's beauty." Before starting, he headed to Kyoto for interviews and to see things firsthand, even visiting the arsonist's hometown. He looked at records from the temple, cops, and courts. He dug deep into the arsonist's background, mind, and the temple's history. Mishima said this was his most researched work. He checked out every spot he could, went everywhere possible, and noted down everything useful. Like gathering specimens, his ideas shifted with careful study. In the book, he blended his views on post-war Japan and thoughts on tradition and human nature, making a whole new tale. Up next, I'll sketch the story, then break it down into 4 parts. 1. Looking at themes and characters. 2. Talking about the post-war Japan behind the Golden Pavilion. 3. Dissecting Mishima's disillusion in art. And last, how the book mirrors his own life story. Let's first look at the main plot of the novel. The Golden Pavilion's story is set in Japan around World War II's end. Narrated in first person, protagonist Mizoguchi is a frail young monk with severe stutter. Mocked since childhood for his disability, he adored his beautiful neighbor nurse Yoko, but got rejected. Growing up lonely and insecure, Mizoguchi often heard his father say nothing surpassed the Golden Pavilion's beauty, making him obsess over this ethereal vision. Before dying, his father sent him to the Golden Pavilion for monastic training, hoping he'd become abbot someday. So, Mizoguchi finally arrived at his dream destination and began spiritual practice. What makes this Golden Pavilion so magical? The 600-year-old temple, also called Rokundashi-ji, sits in northern Kyoto with a 3-story structure. It's named the Golden Pavilion because both interior and exterior are gilded with gold leaf. And yet inside this beauty, Mizoguchi found only hollow decadence. Monks embezzled offerings, frequented brothels, and lived lavishly, shattering Mizoguchi's ideal and plunging him back into despair. Later, meeting classmates Tsurukawa and Kashiwagi seemed to reignite his will to live. But tragically, the pure sunshine-like Tsurukawa inexplicably committed suicide, while the equally disabled Kashiwagi chose theft and deception. Mizoguchi sank into profound unease and sorrow. Japan was still engulfed in World War II then. Mizoguchi fantasized about perishing with the pavilion if American bombers struck Kyoto. This tragic fantasy emerged from his disillusionment with reality. Since he couldn't change reality, destroying himself with the pavilion became his ultimate tribute to its beauty. But post-war, the pavilion survived unscathed, crushing his hopes and making him spiral into debauchery.
He skipped training for brothels and even plotted to kill his teacher.
Yet sensory pleasures only amplified his unresolved turmoil until he finally torched the Golden Pavilion. As Mizoguchi watched the Golden Pavilion engulfed in flames, he suddenly felt reborn and decided to live on. And so the novel concludes. In this novel, based on true events, the arsonist's psychological motives most captivate readers. Why did Mizoguchi resort to such extremes? In the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, Mishima charts the path to answering this question. He narrates Mizoguchi's burning, not through plot twists, but by focusing on his inner turmoil and conflict. Mishima reveals that Behind the burning lies Mizoguchi's journey as a disabled man from self-loss to self-redemption. In this sense, we can call the Temple of the Golden Pavilion a profound personal epic set against turbulent times. First, Mizoguchi. Mocked for his stutter, he spiraled into self-hatred and mental chaos. He escaped into fantasy, imagining himself an omnipotent tyrant executing scornful teachers and classmates. Simultaneously, he yearned for an embodiment of beauty to redeem his wretched existence. He became infatuated with beautiful Yuiko, but rejection led him to curse her, and the curse came true. Months later, Yuiko died in a lover's suicide with an army deserter. After Yuko's death, the Golden Pavilion, a national treasure, became Mizoguchi's sole solace. To him, nothing surpassed its beauty. Longing for it comforted him. But an unbridgeable gap yawned between the exalted pavilion and his mocked, rejected reality. In Mizoguchi's words, the pavilion was everywhere yet nowhere in reality. As beauty receded, shame and inadequacy consumed him until, at despair's edge, he heard rumors of American bombers targeting Kyoto and felt inexplicable excitement. Under war's shadow, the sacred pavilion and his ugliness became equally fragile, their fates intertwined. He declared, "The fire burning me could also burn the pavilion." This thought intoxicated me. Under the same disaster and ominous fire, the pavilion and my world became equals. Just like my fragile, ugly flesh. Though sturdy, the Golden Pavilion had flammable wood like mortal flesh. But post-war Kyoto survived. The pavilion stood firm, dashing Mizoguchi's hope of perishing with it to redeem his wretchedness. Now the pavilion offered no comfort. Its beauty became useless, just betrayal in his eyes. He said, "It's just a shabby 3-story building now, its phoenix looking like a crow. Is this what they call beauty?" His fractured mind tormented him. Even during sex, the pavilion's image intruded. Women's bodies morphing into the temple caused impotence. Deepening his shame, he declared, "The pavilion stood between women and my life." Now Mizoguchi desperately sought power to shatter this illusion and free himself. But breaking free and rebuilding himself seemed impossible. This leads to 2 other key characters. Let's first discuss Tsurukawa and Kashiwagi, starting with Tsurukawa. Tsurukawa was a bright-faced youth in white robes, pure-hearted, kind to Mizoguchi. His cheer eased Mizoguchi's loneliness.
To Mizoguchi, Tsurukawa was his only bridge to the bright world.
But when Tsurukawa died suddenly in a crash, Mizoguchi felt that connecting thread snap. He plunged back into isolation. Every hope, comfort from the pavilion's beauty, salvation through Tsurukawa's goodness, ended in disillusionment. With Tsurukawa's death and truth gone, Mizoguchi lost himself again as Kashiwagi's dark influence grew. Kashiwagi, a club-footed scholar, Mizoguchi thought shared disability would bond them. But Kashiwagi proved cunning and cruel, finding joy in deception and exploiting women. Mizoguchi didn't agree with Kashiwagi at first, but as he got closer, his thoughts subtly changed.
Once, Kashiwagi faked a fall on the road, exaggeratedly using his disability to win sympathy from a woman, and shockingly got her to devote herself to him.
Witnessing this was stunning. Kashiwagi's blatant arrogance and cruelty, his shameless attitude toward his disability, were barriers Mizoguchi couldn't overcome. Kashiwagi also used tricks to turn disability and inferiority into tools for profit. All this held an inexplicable allure for Mizoguchi. Unconsciously, he slowly gravitated toward Kashiwagi, despite his frail body and low social status. But the pursuit of mental strength and omnipotence is a recurring character type in Mishima's works since the Golden Pavilion. Under Kashiwagi's influence, Mizoguchi's life transformed completely. He did everything to break temple rules, stealing, frequenting brothels, juggling women, and gleefully hoping the teacher would expel him. This was worlds apart from the former Mizoguchi, who dreamed of becoming abbot. He stopped feeling as inferior. Shame and guilt faded, replaced by the thrill of indulgence. He said, "I'm unworthy to face life's bright surface."
Yet, this friend Kashiwagi showed me a dark shortcut to life from the flip side.
This shortcut seems like a rush to ruin at first, but it's cunningly strategic, turning baseness into courage, reducing evil to pure energy. like alchemy. Once constrained by disability, Mizoguchi lived isolated and lonely. Now, joining Kashiwagi in wrongdoing opened an outlet. The thrill gave him power and a sense of control over life.
His self-awareness exploded uncontrollably.
Mizoguchi and Kashiwagi often discussed a Zen koan, which is fascinating. This koan is called Nansen Cuts the Cat in Two. It tells of a monk named Nansen in the Tang dynasty who saw monks fighting over a kitten, each wanting to claim it.
Nansen, who was feeding it as a pet, grabbed the cat's neck and said, "If anyone speaks truth, the cat lives."
If no one can speak truth, I will cut it in two. No one answered, so Monk Nansen cut the kitten in half and discarded it. Later that evening, his favorite disciple Chao Chu returned. Monk Nansen recounted what happened and asked for his opinion. Hearing this, Chao Chu immediately took off his straw sandals, placed them on his head, and walked out. Monk Nansen sighed. If you'd been here today, the kitten could have been saved. Sounds mystical, doesn't it? Indeed puzzling. So Mizoguchi didn't understand its meaning either at the time. Kashiwagi explained to Mizoguchi, the cat represents beauty, elusive and agonizing. Monk Nansen's severed beauty's form, but its essence remains. Destruction isn't the ultimate answer. Chao Chao putting sandals on his head shows beauty is merely conceptual. What people call beauty is just mental illusion. In other words, beauty itself doesn't exist. Under Kashiwagi's teaching, Mizoguchi realized the Golden Pavilion he worshipped was pure mental fabrication. Previously, he saw his disability as his wretched fate's source. Now, he believed the pavilion caused his misery. It blocked him from becoming himself. He began cursing and hating the pavilion, declaring, "Beautiful things are my enemies," abandoning all pursuit of beauty and goodness. His new self, built on ugliness and evil, began swelling uncontrollably. Petty evil no longer satisfied him. His enemy wasn't his body or people. He needed to destroy something grand and abstract to prove his omnipotence. So Mizoguchi conceived burning the pavilion. Just imagining it gave him a swollen sense of destiny. My originality is undeniable. I'll burn this Meiji-era national treasure. Pure destruction, irreplaceable ruin. It truly diminished humanity's total beauty. The once an inferior boy suddenly believed he was chosen. He believed this act would educate the world. By destroying the pavilion, Mizoguchi sought to obliterate all beauty obstacles, break his life's curse, shock the world with his declaration, rebuild his identity, achieve redemption, and be reborn. Now, this dialectical process reflects the philosophical depth in Mishima's novel. If Mizoguchi's journey was from self-division to self-identity and redemption, we must recognize the Golden Pavilion represents post-war Japan's national identity crisis. So, anxiety. In this sense, the novel is also a political allegory. Post-World War II Japan faced invasive foreign influences. American-imposed democratic reforms denied the emperor's divinity, while pacifism replaced militaristic imperial supremacy. Traditional militarism, Japan's identity cornerstone, was destabilized, leaving countless passionate youths like Mizoguchi directionless. Thus, the Golden Pavilion became an idealized symbol. This ideal embodied Japan's lost glory and supreme value, Bushido's spirit. Let's briefly examine the pavilion's history. Originally a Kamakura-era villa for Saionji Kitsune, it was later given to Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, third shogun of the Muromachi shogunate. Built in the late 14th century by warrior rulers, it stood as a symbol of samurai ethos. Like European chivalry, Bushido was a moral code valuing courage, justice, benevolence, respect, wisdom, honesty, loyalty, and self-discipline. To samurai, upholding these virtues outweighed survival itself. Post-war Japan faced not just economic chaos, but total ideological transformation and westernization. The loss of Bushido in Japan's soul, mirrored by Mizoguchi seeing monks' corruption and Kashiwagi's depravity, reflected the era's psychological bleakness. The pavilion's symbolism became meaningless, falling like the dethroned emperor. To Mizoguchi, the pavilion's beauty felt hopeless. Defeat's shadow loomed, traditional anchors were lost, yet he couldn't perish with it in war. Destroying it became his tragic Bushido fulfillment. Like a failed samurai choosing death, the pavilion too must fall. Thus, Mizoguchi's descent into arson mirrors Mishima's own martyrdom to Japan's spiritual crisis. As personal epic and political prophecy, the Golden Pavilion embodies dual disillusionment, individual and national. This tragic aesthetic of disillusionment is the core essence of Mishima's literature. This characteristic isn't unique to Mishima. It stems from Eastern mysticism's influence on post-war-wide Japanese literary traditions. Japanese literature often embodies delicacy and sensitivity, like the mono no aware aesthetic in the Tale of Genji. Mono no aware refers to the subtle, nuanced emotions born from contemplating all things. In the early 20th century, Western literary influences merged traditional mono no aware with modern techniques. Especially post-war, works by Kawabata Yasunari, Sakaguchi Engo, and Dazai Osamu explored beauty, death, and value. In depicting pathological psychological realities, Mishima was Kawabata's student who rose to fame through his recommendation. Reflecting on social realities, Mishima constructed a distorted world in the Golden Pavilion, exploring spiritual disillusionment and rebirth, forming his unique aesthetic. This style continued in Mishima's later works like Patriotism, The Decay of the Angel, and The Sea of Fertility, where Mizoguchi's archetype reappears. I think the famous German poet Rilke wrote, "Beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror we're still just able to endure." We praise it so because it serenely disdains to destroy us. This perfectly describes the Golden Pavilion's aesthetic experience. Mishima excelled at psychological portrayal with especially vivid depictions of disabled characters' inner worlds. This likely came from his adoption of Western literary techniques. For example, Mizoguchi's disability confession. People might think they need mirrors to see themselves, but disability is a mirror forever hanging at my nose tip, reflecting my whole body day and night. Forgetting is impossible. And this passage about Mizoguchi's isolation, once loneliness set in, I adapted quickly. Hardly speaking to anyone, I realized this life required no effort. The anxiety of living vanished. Every day of dying was joyful. Beyond psychological depth, Mishima masterfully used metaphors to depict evil beauty dialectics, ugliness, violence, and war. Mizoguchi gains identity through antisocial acts, drawing power and rebirth from ugliness and evil. Though depicting humanity's dark, twisted aspects, Mishima extracts something mysterious and alluringly beautiful. For instance, Mizoguchi's thoughts on wartime wounds. Why are spilled intestines so ghastly? Why does seeing inside the human body cause such terror?
Why do we shut our eyes immediately?
Why does spilled blood shock us so? Why are human innards so repulsive? If we saw humans like roses, no inside or outside, why would that thought become inhuman? If human spirit and flesh could unfurl softly like rose petals in May's sun and breeze, roses and sunlight, innards and blood, these sensorially jarring words placed together create immense tension. Or when Mizoguchi skipped school to watch the sea at Yura River's end, the description goes, the sea rages, waves crashing one after another. Between waves, glimpses of a vast gray abyss. Above the dark sea, dense clouds loom heavy yet delicate. The blue-green sea backs against purple-black mountains. Yeah.
I suddenly recalled Kashiwagi's words from our first meeting. We become abruptly cruel.
In moments like a bright spring afternoon, on manicured grass, blankly watching sunlight through leaves. In playful instants, the sea, sun, wind, and Golden Pavilion become metaphors, willful entities Mishima uses to escalate psychological conflict toward tragic ends. Through self-analytical confession, Mishima lays bare beauty's investment, its disillusionment, and the transcendence from despair to destruction, juxtaposing nature's purity with humanity's cruelty. Oh. He once said, "I'd never commit evil, yet I'm often shocked by my fascination with it, and my artistic concern stems from this. Thus, I consistently link evil and beauty, precisely beneath lavish descriptions, highlighting the Golden Pavilion's profound void." Mishima constructs a bizarre, terrifying aesthetic world that immerses readers, making them experience that distant, illusory beauty shattered by reality's ugliness, feeling humanity's distortion in a desacralized Japan. Thus, rather than calling the novel's tragic beauty the pinnacle of Japanese aesthetics, it's Mishima, deeply loving his nation, singing an elegy. For post-war II defeat and unprecedented nihilism, Kawabata once said, "A genius like Mishima Yukio comes once every 200 to 300 years." The era's imprint on Mishima is key to understanding his work's ideology. Born in late Taisho's turmoil, living through Showa, he witnessed militarism from Manchuria to Pearl Harbor, then post-war pacifism. In the militarist era, Mishima was a passionate youth from an official family, educated among nobility, influenced by romantics, worshipping the emperor and Bushido, longing to bleed on the front lines, a nationalist obsessed with apocalypse. But poor health barred him from battle. In peacetime, his ideal of beautiful death was negated. Patriotic ambitions met cold rejection. 1945. Japan's defeat was Mishima's most painful year. He wrote, "My dream of being the era's symbol vanished. At 20, I found myself outdated, utterly bewildered. During war, I played genius in small circles. Post-war, I was just an ignored, weak student." This spiritual despair mirrors Mizoguchi's, doesn't it? From Mizoguchi's pursuit of beauty to disillusionment, from defeat to destructive transcendence, Mishima presents his true self through self-dissecting narration. Mizoguchi burning the pavilion was like sacrificing it to lost Bushido, an act mirroring Mishima's own end. In November 1970, 45-year-old Mishima, in uniform with Hisho Hokuku headband, Mishima once called his mother, saying, "So far, I've been powerless in everything I wanted to do, and in such a mad way." Mishima fused his writing and life. His death became his final literary work. Like the burned Golden Pavilion or the slain cat, it became a symbol and emblem, a spiritual crisis born of lost faith. This is the unsolved ruin Mishima left for posterity. Thus, the Golden Pavilion was written not just for post-war Japan, but for every youth in peacetime. For it explores humanity's eternal quest, the relentless pursuit of spirit and value. Kafka once wrote, "In war you bleed out, in peace you can't move an inch." Today, reading this half-century-old work, we feel the tragic beauty of Mishima's literature. We may not understand Mishima's actions, nor endorse his beliefs or choices, but crucially, through his life and art, we witness an era grappling with value loss and despair. Mishima's life narrative helps us rethink, in our fast-changing era, how do we navigate tradition versus modernity? East-West cultural clashes, collapsing aesthetics and faith, more common now than ever. Each heart holds its own golden pavilion, yet coexisting has no blueprint. Not losing myself, finding spiritual anchors, these grow harder daily. That concludes our interpretation of the Golden Pavilion. Find reading notes below the audio. Until next time.